Diana. I couldn't be happier today because I'm here with Tory Wobber. And today we're gonna talk about women's leadership. We're gonna talk about high achiever women. We're gonna talk about career and women in tech and some other topics. So please, Tory, Victoria, uh, la gente la conoce como Tory, people know her as Tory. Entonces, hoy vamos a hablar de mujeres y liderazgo, vamos a hablar de mujeres en tecnología y estoy súper feliz de estar aquí con Tory. So, Tory, welcome, and please introduce yourself. Bienvenida.
Yes, happy to be here. Uso Victoria en Latinoamérica porque es más fácil Victoria que Tory. Tory es algo desconocido, entonces puedes usar los dos. No me importa. I'm Tory Wobber. I'm a career and leadership coach. Excited to be here today and to talk with you, Nayana. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you. Victoria, Vicky in Mexico, we'll say like Vicky, like sometimes we have like different, I don't, yeah, different, I'm the one, different, no, diferente nosotras, like different you, different yourself, diferentes como personas, porque in some contexts, in some countries, you can be like, in the US, maybe you're like very well known as Tori, but I'm pretty sure that in Mexico, and because Victoria Tori, she's here in Mexico, like, maybe almost most of people will tell you like Vicky, like, it's like very, so well, Tori. So Tori, she's a woman that I was looking at her. I was looking at her LinkedIn, and something that caught my eyes is that well, you have a very successful career in tech and in Silicon Valley. So Tori, please tell us how is to be a woman in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, well, and it's funny, Silicon Valley, I'm now on my third career, starting my own business. I was in Silicon Valley, I was in academia, so my perspectives on Silicon Valley come from having grown up there. I grew up in the Bay Area, and then from having returned to work there. And so I'll speak to my experience as a woman in tech, though it's not everyone's experience. For me, the experience of being a woman in tech was challenging. It was challenging to feel like the predominant perspective there is from a male software engineer. And anyone who didn't have that perspective had to almost justify themselves in that group. You had to prove you were technical enough. You had to prove you knew things consistently over and over every day. For me, eventually it got exhausting. There's a lot of amazing work happening there, a lot of impact, a lot of growth, but the conflict between being a woman who didn't fit the default persona eventually just got a little tiring for me.
Sí, porque estamos hablando de los desafíos de ser mujer en Silicon Valley y cómo, porque, a ver, let's explain a little bit of the context that, so Victoria, she has not only a PhD at Harvard, but also a bachelor degree. Entonces, Tori, van a escuchar hablar Tori, Victoria, Vicky probablemente, but she has a bachelor degree and a PhD at Harvard. So this is we're talking about. I mean, come on, the Ivy League, and she grew up in Silicon Valley. O sea, Victoria creció en Silicon Valley. Tiene una licenciatura y un doctorado en Harvard. Y nos está hablando que justo, o sea, incluso habiendo crecido, incluso el hecho de haber crecido en Silicon Valley, y ella se me está componiendo todas las palabras, todos los verbos, pero el hecho de que creció ahí y estuvo en Harvard en la licenciatura y el doctorado, también identificó que aún en un contexto así, igual te enfrentas a muchos desafíos al ser mujer en tecnología. Pero so you mentioned that you swiped from a PhD and then for a job in the tech industry. How was that? I mean, porque Vicky hizo, bueno, licenciatura, bueno, maestría y doctorado en Harvard, estuvo en la academia y después brincó al sector de tecnología. Entonces, if you can tell us a little bit more about that swap, that jump from a PhD to the tech industry.
Brincar fue fácil, pero las diferencias entre las dos industrias son muchos. Por ejemplo, en Harvard, mi voz fue, ok, hay oportunidades para tener ideas y hay oportunidades por muchos de tener ideas y es como una discusión intelectual. En tech no es así. Hay muchos dinámicos de poder, de quién tiene más poder, que yo desde el inicio no lo entendí. Y en academia yo tengo una experiencia de quién, el profesor más viejo en, en la sala va a hablar con más gravitas. Pero en tech hay algunas fuerzas así, pero fueron difíciles a entender. But to jump from academia to tech, for me, once I decided to leave, was not difficult. I identified that with the help of informational interviews guiding me the right way, I identified that data science at that time was growing rapidly and was looking for the kind of quantitative skills that I had developed in my PhD, granted in a very different domain, right? I was working with chimpanzees. I went to work with Facebook users. You can joke about how those might be similar, but realistically, it was a very
Yes.
new domain. That said,
Wow.
the quantitative skills, statistics, experiments, A/B testing, all of those things, the ability to take data and distill it for non-specialists, those skills were in high demand. So I was able to find a high-paying job fairly quickly because of that match between my skills and what the market was looking for at the time. It's different today. Data science has grown a lot in the past 10 years, but at that time it was possible to make that jump with the skills I had.
Yeah. And I guess that at the beginning it was like because it is extremely different, like academia from industry, and we're talking about tech, and also from Boston. Well, because I guess that you were living in Boston, no? So from Boston to well, coming back to the Bay Area. So I'm just curious about I was just thinking about this right now, but uh, did you how did you what's the thing that you enjoy the most of like living in Boston and then living in the Bay Area and the best and the worst? ¿Qué es lo que más te gustó y lo que menos te gustó de vivir en Boston y qué es lo que más te gustó y menos te gustó de vivir en Silicon Valley?
Ah, eso es fácil. Para un estudiante en Boston es increíble. Es un mundo lleno de estudiantes, cosas para estudiantes, arte, museos, eventos para estudiantes. Entonces, como estudiante es increíble, pero la cosa peor es el invierno. Porque como californiense, este invierno, que es como 6 meses de nieve, demasiado para mí. Entonces, regresar a California, donde el clima es un poco más fácil, fue algo bueno para mí. In California, in the Bay Area, the growth, right? The sense of opportunity and innovation and all those things happening in that area is incredible. And you don't get that same sense in Boston, even with all the educational institutions and research there. It's a little more ivory tower, where tech is more impact focused, more personality focused. But almost that strength is also its weakness because it can be a little one dimensional. If you're not in the tech industry in the Bay Area, right? Doctors, lawyers, artists, bankers, all these folks, it's sort of like you're on the outside and there's this dynamic of tech versus non-tech. And so, for example, during an era when I was there riding a shuttle bus to work, people were throwing rocks at those shuttle buses because they were angry at tech for gentrifying. And so that sort of tech, non-tech disparity is something that that area has to wrangle with. Hey, Boston does too, right? With the educational institutions and the town-gown relationships there, but in tech, you feel it very acutely.
Mm, yeah, and also, well, something that I spent like 2 months in Silicon Valley, and then something that I loved about that area is that you can feel like it's like tech is all around, but also I don't know if it was. I mean, I just spent there like I was working for a project for 2 months over there. Tech, of course, it was a tech and social. Thing. But I could feel like, yeah, even though the like tech is being created in Palo Alto, you go to the coffee shops and people are not like in other areas, like using a lot their devices. Not at all. It's just like the opposite. It's people are very well connected to the nature, to the and they leave the devices on the side. And it's more. It's kind of like the luxury is being like not connected. And this is something that I loved it. I don't know if it was just my sense, but I mean, you grew up there. How was that?
Well, and it's funny, the luxury being not connected is actually something I'm thinking about now being in Valle de Bravo, thinking about bringing opportunities for folks to come here and disconnect from their devices as a luxury. You know, Valle de Bravo is known as a fun place for folks in Mexico. I think for folks in that environment in California to be able to come disconnect here could be really incredible. For me, there, working a job in corporate, especially when I was commuting from San Francisco to work, I didn't have that much time to enjoy those things outside of work because I was exhausted. So every now and then on the weekend, I would go for a hike if I could muster the energy. But at the end of the day, when you're getting home at 7, 8 p.m. off a shuttle ride, off a long day of work, it's very difficult. And I felt that only near the end of my time in tech, where I was getting a little bit better at the work-life balance, oh, and because I was working in San Francisco, was I able to have more of a social life because I cut 2 hours of commuting out of my day. So there was a time when it was difficult to enjoy those things. When I was working from the San Francisco office and living in San Francisco, it was easier to get out and actually enjoy the city, go sit in Dolores Park, go salsa dancing, all sorts of amazing things that San Francisco has to offer.
Okay. And then I was thinking that when you decide, I looking at your website, and then I saw that you have like it's called Academic Exit Playbook. Entonces
Mhm,
tienes un libro, escribiste un libro
mhm.
que se ve buenísimo, que se llama cuando el playbook no sé cómo traducir playbook en español, de fuera de la academia. Y when did you decide to write that book? How long does it took you to write that book, and why did you? I mean, of course, I can think about why, but if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Pienso que escribí este libro en un mes, pero trabajar, editos por como un año y al fin fue establecer un dato que yo voy a publicar y decirlo, publicarlo en redes sociales, que por fin yo lo publico, pero fue mucho tiempo mejorarlo. I wrote that because I wanted to share my journey out of academia, the parts of it that were hard, the parts that I learned, so that I could lighten the load for other academics. Because sometimes PhDs considering leaving academia, it's getting less common now, but there can be a belief that it's impossible, that it's the wrong thing to do, that you're letting down your institution and all the investment you've made in your education. So to write to folks that that's okay, it's very much possible. Here are some tools that you have to make that leap possible. That was my goal, was to share my experience and share what I had learned coaching PhDs up to that point to leave academia, with the goal that someone can download that and use it at 2 in the morning if they can't, right? They can find coaching time with me, but if they're really panicking in the middle of the night, they have that self-serve resource available to be able to go back and see some steps and some normalization of the journey out of academia.
Yeah, so I mean, you're a high achiever, of course. Let's be honest, people that have a PhD because I mean high achievers, but not only in academia but also in industry. I was looking into your LinkedIn profile, and you were like global marketing at Google. O sea, estamos aquí con una mujerona que no que justamente a ver, las personas que hacen un doctorado le llaman los high achievers, los que como que ay, tengo que buscar la palabra traducida exactamente, pero bueno, que buscan como que lo más alto, ¿no? Y en el caso de Tori, o sea, también cuando ella se cambió a, bueno, ya estuvo en varias empresas, y algo que despertó mi interés en su perfil es que no solo fue, bueno, tuvo el doctorado en Harvard y, bueno, y doctorado y etcétera, sino también logró tener una posición de liderazgo de directora global de marketing en Google. Y eso es muy difícil, o sea, pues sabiendo todos los desafíos bueno, que una mujer y una mujer en la tecnología tiene que enfrentarse. Pero yo me pregunto, ¿cómo es que, o sea, llegaste al top bueno, en Google, o sea, en Google head, ser directora de marketing. But why did you decide to have your own company instead of still growing professionally in the tech industry? Because you could jump from being the head of Google and then another company and then another. Like, ¿qué te hizo como decidir, de repente decir, ya, basta del mundo tecnológico, a pesar de tener un puesto de liderazgo, a crear tu propia compañía?
Bueno, primero, caveat, hay muchos global heads en Google, eso no es el nivel más alto, hay muchos más pasos en esta escalera, entonces eso fue algo a medio, pero sí, fue un desafío lograrlo. Um, para mí, la cosa que me puse en mi empresa fue el tipo de impacto. En este área yo puedo crecer Google, yo puedo agregar a sus ad revenues o sus revenue de cloud, a sus ganancias en estas áreas, pero el impacto interpersonal es menos. Y desde ser jefe, yo me di cuenta que este impacto entre personas para mí fue más interesante que este impacto de ganar más dólares. Entonces, este rol de jefe, yo puedo hacer como un 20% de mi tiempo con gente, desarrollar gente, y como coach, yo puedo hacer como un 90% de mi tiempo en desarrollar gente, impacto humano. Entonces, para mí, yo decidí que este impacto por este capítulo de mi carrera es más meaningful para mí en esta época. Pero no es así por todas las personas. Eso es mi decisión personal, pero yo me di cuenta que en el rol de jefe yo siempre necesito priorizar los impactos de dólares más que los impactos de personas y yo elegí un cambio.
Sí, centrarte más, entonces, you focus more on people, en las personas. Sí,
Ujú.
so could you, and then you create your own company coaching, of course, on leadership coaching. So could you tell us more about your coaching? Because there, I mean, why do your clients come to you? What kind of people do you coach? Because we know that there is a lot of coaches over there, but and each coach has their own kind of clients or profiles. So tell us more about your. I mean, Tory, Vicky, Victoria. I mean, we're like you speak English, Spanish. Tell us more about your coaching, please.
Yeah, and so I think there are two profiles, two moments, two types of people who I mainly work with, and then a third that is less common, but that sometimes finds their way to me. The first is PhDs looking to leave academia, or anyone who feels stuck in their career and wants to make a change to something different. Because look, I've done that a few times, right? I've made some big leaps. And so saying, okay, how do I do this? How do I pick out what's next for me? How do I make it possible, even though it's scary and unknown? That's something I adore helping folks with, have a lot of experience doing that with PhDs in particular. The other place where I'm an insider and can help folks without still being in the system is in tech. So for folks who have just made a change, right? They've stepped into something new and they're saying, whoa, I was a manager, now I'm a manager of managers. How do I do that well? I can be a resource who can bounce around ideas with them, knowing their world, but I'm not part of it. It can be dangerous when you're there to share those set of ideas with peers because they may be grasping at the same resources. So having that opportunity to be a resource, both as coach and sort of soundboard of ideas, I find that I work with many folks who are leveling up in tech, who want to stick the landing of their new level, as well as folks who are looking to make a move. The last group who works with me, who I don't really reach out to, but they sometimes find me, are folks who are burned out at the end of their rope, just need some help to reestablish stability and find boundaries. I think that because I've been on that journey myself, I sometimes share stories that resonate with folks, and so they find me, but probably less common for me than the career changers, either trying to make a change or they've just made a change and they want to succeed in it.
Wow, and then you mentioned that you are located in Mexico. ¿Por qué? O sea, bueno, I know that Mexico, come on, Mexico. I cannot say like por qué, but I mean, but why did you choose Mexico? I mean, when did you decide to like to come to Mexico, to move to Mexico? Why? And why, where are you located? And yeah, why Mexico? If you can
Well,
be
and I
anywhere
think
in the world.
Right? There are two answers to that. There's why did I choose it and why do I keep choosing it? I chose it initially because when I was looking at starting my business, I really thought I was going to fail. And so I wanted to give myself the longest opportunity to fail possible. And so, where in San Francisco, living on my savings, I would have 6 months of runway. In Playa del Carmen, where I moved first, I had 18 months of runway. And so I was giving myself more cushion to fail. But now, more than 4 years later, being in Mexico, I've realized that my quality of life is higher here. I can mention la comida, okay? Es muy rico.
Deliciosa.
También en Valle de Bravo tenemos, oh, muy ricos tacos suadero y longaniza y todo eso. But the quality of life here is better. Part of that is tied to the fact that I have the privilege of earning in dollars and spending in pesos. But to be honest, it seems like Mexican immigration is happy about that, right? Like, hey, earn in dollars, come spend it here. And the opportunity to get to support local small businesses here, to go to someone who's hand making tortillas in the same way that's been done for thousands of years, just supporting someone there and supporting that continuity and cultural tradition. We don't have as much of that in the US, especially in Silicon Valley, where it's still sort of so new and emergent. So that connection to history, that sense of place here, at least for me, feels far stronger. And so I feel just happier being able to connect to that, even as sort of still a guest, right? To actually learn and understand more about this place and then eat really good food. There are benefits to me for staying here.
And how was like living because you moved from Playa del Carmen to Valle de Bravo, so it's like nothing to like sin nada que ver. It's very different. But yeah, how do you feel that it is different, like from Playa del Carmen to Valle de Bravo? Yeah, even I think like people around. So how do you feel? Like how do you see
Very
it?
different. Very different. And in between there, I spent 2 years in Querétaro and about 6 months in Ciudad de Mexico. So I've seen a number of different parts of Mexico that all have their pros and cons, right? Playa is beautiful, fully recommend for a vacation, but living there full time is hard because the town is in party mode full time. And so if you actually want to like have a job where you're on a computer, not the easiest to do, but I would heartily recommend it as a vacation town. Querétaro, on the other hand, is a really great place to work. There are a lot of folks there who are growing their poder adquisitivo, right? They're actually buying a house and having a good paying job. That city also is growing, but not from tourism, more from other areas of industry. And there are a lot of folks from the US who have settled there because they have a partner there, because they just love Querétaro. So there's a great expat community as well. Mexico City drew me because of its energy, and I wanted to go and just be part of that energy. But then it turned out the energy, the traffic, the pollution was a little too much. So my partner and I decided to come here to Valle de Bravo to take a month off of Mexico City. And then we just decided to stay because here it's just the pace of life is calm and slow. Folks are really friendly here. I haven't encountered too many other folks from outside of Mexico here. There are a lot of folks who are Vallecano or who come from Mexico City to slow down their pace of life. But again, it's a really interesting group of folks to get to know and get to understand. And so it's been a lot of fun so far.
That's great. I have like the different views of different cities in Mexico like that. It's like nadie te lo va a contar. Tú lo has vivido con con tus propios ojos de vivir en diferentes ciudades. And so now you are a businesswoman in Mexico. You have your own leadership, no, coaching business. So, how do you see the environment for businesswomen in Mexico? Because I mean, yeah, how do you see that?
I see so many women running small businesses here. To me, the small business environment feels a little bit friendlier than in the US, right? The opportunities to set up businesses here, there are so many because the economy is still in growth stage. There are a lot of opportunities that haven't been served yet, where in the US, the paperwork, the health insurance, the big competitors, that's starting to happen here in Mexico, but there's still a lot more dynamism here for small business owners. And so it's really fun to be able to see women running businesses here and the opportunities that exist because of that growth. It may also be, at least from what I've seen, that the employment opportunities like employee, the sort of balance there between employment and starting your own business here looks a little different, where in the US, there's some very compelling salaried positions, and starting your own business can look a lot poorer in comparison. But I do think that here, that growth stage of the economy and the opportunity of women to contribute to that is awesome. I also love being a woman small business owner because where in tech, I felt that sort of you don't fit every day, right? Every day you're not talking the way you should, smile more, various things. As a small business owner, even operating in a different language that is not my country, I feel more okay. I feel more welcome. I feel like an outsider, but not someone who's like, oh, well, because you're not like us, you're terrible, right? People here are sort of more open to a lot of different ways of living and a lot of different ways of doing business, certainly. And so when I talk to folks here about what I do, they're often like, what? Someone in is like, coaching? What? But it's definitely, there is, yeah, less of that. You need to fit this specific mold. Mexico has a lot more individualism and opportunity for folks to build what they want to build and fail and succeed, but a lot more opportunity in that sense. That's the way I sense it. How does it feel for you? You've
Yeah,
lived in both
absolutely.
places.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of opportunity in Mexico, as you mentioned, as it is growing, and I think that also, yeah, I mean, in Mexico we are like very welcome, like como que we embrace like new people, and I think if you with the remote work and now you can be wherever you want and even I mean now because we are saying that we are in Mexico but sometimes you don't even know where is the other person and it's because nowadays it's like it doesn't matter but kind of it depends on what you do but most of a lot of jobs are like you can be remote and I think that's great and there is like the previous years and well there is an Mm, hay un llamado para incluir desde hace muchos años a más mujeres en tecnología. So there is bueno, we are like encouraging women to pursue careers in tech, and so now there are a lot of women that are like studying or want to be in tech because I think that there was a lot of like information about that and yeah, a lot of motivation and encouragement for women to be in tech. But um, also something that is happening is that with the development of artificial intelligence and technology, also there is it's kind of as lo vendieron muy bien. They sell, I mean, it's like very well sold. But when women are looking for actually for jobs in tech, there is kind of a lack of women in tech because it is not that easy to get into tech. So, what piece of advice could you give for women that want to pursue a career in tech or want to enter into the tech field or want to do this move to the tech field? What piece of
Yeah,
advice?
well, and there were so many different themes and topics in that question, but I'll dig in. Within tech, I mentioned some areas that are tougher, right? And you mentioned some areas that AI is actually threatening. I think getting the exposure, getting the skills, getting the network are nonetheless valuable, no matter where you decide to go, right? And so getting some time in tech, it's a high growth industry, it's a high risk industry. As folks have seen over the past few years, big tech had a number of layoffs. That said, the skills, the connections, the experience you get there open a lot of doors. And so to the extent that if you can find folks who you can connect with to vet a group and say, okay, how does this group operate? Does this group make things comfortable for women? Is this group doing impactful work that I want to do? Those opportunities exist. It's just sometimes you have to work a little bit harder to find them. And I do think AI is a threat on the long term, but the next 3 to 5 years at very least, there are some amazing tech companies, and you're going to start seeing more AI companies popping up. I'm working with more and more folks who are looking at conversational design, who are actually working at, okay, how do we make the AIs have helpful conversations? Folks who have backgrounds in linguistics can find a path there. So the other thing I'll just mention is tech is more than just software engineering. I never held a role in software engineering. I was a data scientist. I worked as an analyst in HR. I worked as a marketer. There's so many other roles aside from software engineering. So if you want to be in tech, don't assume that you have to get a software engineering background. I once ran a workshop at the Women in Computing conference called Grace Hopper. That was for women who didn't have an engineering background to get into tech. We had something like 450 attendees for this panel discussion of myself and a few colleagues who had done this, right? And so there's a large interest there and still a possibility for folks like myself who didn't have engineering skills to get into tech. So if you listening to this don't have that engineering skill set, there are other roles in tech where you can support the growth of those organizations. And there's a lot of opportunity to grow there and open doors to what's next.
Yeah, there is a lot of room over there. And yeah, and cada vez más, ¿no? Porque también es que la tecnología está cambiando todo. O sea, it's crazy how, like, specifically, like, I think I'm thinking about how it's changing everything, even, yeah, everything. So, Tori, Vicky, Victoria, do you have a favorite motto, quote, una frase favorita, algo que te inspira, algo que como que de repente, algo así que te venga a la mente, que no sé, que te defina, que te gusta, que lo tienes aquí, ¿sabes? Do you have a, like,
I couldn't think of one. I don't have a motto or go-to quote. Is that terrible? I'm not
no,
sure. Right? I have a number of things that inspire me, but it's funny. I find my inspiration changes so often that to have
yeah,
one that has always served me, it's almost like I
yeah,
have things for a time, right? So, yeah,
sí, me encanta.
not anything
Oye,
into
y,
room.
sí, oye, y are there any exciting book, podcast, video, film, whatever that you can recommend related to your interest? It can be related to what you do. It can be related. It can be something that I'm recently reading this, and even though it has nothing to do with what you do, it does, like, yeah, if there is something that you can share.
Para la gente que están doctorados, pensando en ex academia, hay mucha gente en LinkedIn que puede seguir, que tiene su experiencia y hay una buena comunidad de gente ex académica en LinkedIn que puede seguir. Si quieres checar el ambiente de Silicon Valley desde alguien que fue otro outsider, hay un libro que se llama Uncanny Valley. No recuerdo que lo escribí, Rebecca something or other. Great book on the sort of uncanniness of Silicon Valley. Los libros que yo leí recientemente y me gustó, Fail Fast, Fail Often. Particularly as women, we're not always allowed to fail. Sometimes we're supposed to go towards things we're already good at. And so really learning, okay, how can I embrace failure and use that as a learning opportunity? There's this book called Die with Zero that talks about spending your money during your life and how to sort of die with zero money because you've had great experiences, but also allowed yourself to have all those experiences. And then a book that I recommend for anyone sort of in transition, thinking about what they want to make of their life. There's a book called Dying to Be Me about this woman who had cancer and had a near-death experience, but then went on to survive and become this inspirational figure. That book is really spectacular for anyone who maybe is at midlife wondering, hey, what do I want to make of my time on this planet? That's a great book. So lots of recommendations there for folks to check out.
Lots of recommendations for sure. So I'm gonna leave all the. So yeah, I will. We can find you on LinkedIn with Victoria entre paréntesis Tory Wobber Wobber. Y also you have like this. Also, I was checking your website and you have like an area where it's called library and where you have other a lot of resources. So yeah, so I think you should, si alguien nos está escuchando, pues échale un ojo a la página de ahorita de Tori, la voy a dejar en los comentarios. Y Tori, well, thank you so much for this time shared. And I'm so happy to be connected with you and to share all the amazing things that you do. And I think there is a lot of women over there, and well, men also, that would like to get in touch with what you are doing because it's inspiring, like your career and whatever everything that you have done. So, muchísimas gracias por este tiempo compartido.
Gracias a ti. Esto fue tan divertido hablar tal en español y inglés. Oh, how fun. Thank you so much for inviting me, giving me the opportunity to have that conversation on the topics that we talked about today. Really hope that folks who are listening take some inspiration ideas from it. So thank you, Nayana, for hosting me.
Gracias a ti, Tori. Pues muchísimas gracias a todas y a todos por escucharnos. Voy a dejar todos los datos de Tori en los comentarios de este episodio. Y recuerden que la mejor manera de apoyar este podcast es compartiéndolo con sus amigas y sus amigos. Nos vemos en el siguiente episodio. Bye.